Hello, and welcome to another Settings.Xml explained video. We're going to be covering the different options that relate to the database connection that Decisions has with its database that can be altered in the Settings.Xml. So, as a quick refresher, you can find the Settings.Xml typically stored under your local drive, program files, decisions, decisions server, and then you'll find the Settings.Xml document in there. And as another reminder, anytime you make a change to the Settings XML, you must restart the decision service in order for the change to take effect. So with that being said, let's go over the three topics that are going to be involved with the database that you can affect with the Settings XML. The first one is enabling full text search within the platform. The second one is you can increase database query timeouts in a few different areas actually. And the third one is going to be options that allow you to migrate to a new database by altering the connection string. So let's start by discussing full text search. All right. Full text search is a function of many MS SQL databases and it allows for query-like searches of data. Decisions can utilize this same service in the Decisions portal search if you configure this Settings XML property. I do want to note, because Decisions is utilizing the full text search capabilities of the database must already have full text search functionality enabled in order for Decisions to utilize it. All right. I'll go over how to make sure that Decisions can utilize this in just a moment. But right now, we're going to move on to the next thing that you can affect with the database, and that is query timeouts. So, Decisions has the option to run queries against its own database, both user-defined queries and platform default queries that are automatically included when you install Decisions on a server. By default, this query timeout is 60 seconds as specified in the Settings XML. However, you can increase this timeout from the decision side if you know a query is going to take longer to execute. For example, if you have a scheduled job that maybe runs once a month that performs a lot of updates to that database, and you know it's going to take longer than 60 seconds in order to perform those updates, you may want to consider increasing this timeout. Now, it is important that there are two timeouts that have to be taken into consideration here: the decision server timeouts and the database timeouts. Each of these have their own threshold for when a query takes too long and the connection is cut. So, if the decisions database timeout is increased to 480 seconds, but the default database timeout is 300 seconds still, you'll notice that after it hits the database timeout, you're going to see the query hit a timeout. So, with that being said, let's go on to the last thing that can be affected here, and that is migration to a new database. Now, there could be many reasons you want to migrate. Maybe you have to move to a database that has more resources involved. Perhaps there's a security issue where you have to make sure that the database is secured on its own server. Therefore, you would need to update the connection from Decisions to the new database that's been moved to a secure location. Or perhaps there's a physical server migration. You have to move it to another database while the other database gets moved somewhere else. So these are multiple reasons why you may want to move it in the first place. And that would involve updating the connection string in the Settings XML. So I'm going to go in and demo now how you do all of these things in the Settings XML so that you understand how to perform these actions in your own environment. So here I am inside of my Decisions Settings XML. The first feature that we talked about, full text search, can be enabled by setting this particular line, full text search, to enabled, as you can see right here. You will type in enabled, and then you will restart the Decisions service. Afterwards, Decisions will then utilize the full text search capabilities of the database that it's installed against in order to allow for query-like searches in the portal. So this is how you set that right here in this highlighted full text search line. The next thing we talked about was increasing the query timeout. You can set that right here by setting the default database query timeout and then specify the number of seconds needed in order for decisions to throw a timeout error for a query to its database. So, the default is 60 seconds, but if I wanted to increase this to something larger, like 300 seconds, this is where I would do it. I would put it right here. I would then, again, restart the decision service, and now the timeout is going to increase from the decision side. If you are still seeing timeout issues, you may want to check either your load balancer or proxy, or check the database itself to see if it has a stricter timeout than what you've set here. And then the last thing we talked about was the database connection string. You'll notice here in this highlighted section that it is very, very long, and that is because it is encoded. So when you add a database connection string to decisions upon installation, it will put that here and encode it so that anyone accessing the Settings.Xml does not automatically have access to that connection string. However, if you do replace this connection string with one that is unencoded, it will still update appropriately. You will just have to provide the new connection string here to the database you're trying to connect to, restart the decision service, and then after pulling up the Settings.Xml again, you will see that your new database connection string is encoded as well. Now, I do want to specify something, that if you were to run the decisions installer, as I can right here, and then I select Edit Settings, you'll notice when I go down to the database connection string, it is not encoded. You can also make the update here and perform a service restart in order to accomplish the same change as altering the Settings.Xml. So this might come in handy if you are changing the name of the database, trying to remember the old credentials in order to make a different connection somewhere. You can pull that up here and it will show it for you unencoded. Now be careful when you're moving connection strings around, because if you are moving your decisions environment to another database, you want to ensure that everything is open between the new database server and the decision server. Make sure that connection is functioning. And I would highly recommend checking with your IT ops team that everything is put in place in order to connect that new database. And if you are moving a database that already exists, then to make sure that that is replicated appropriately. Thank you very much for watching. Hope this helped.